Hi, fourth graders. I purposely chose this lesson because I know I heard moaning and groaning from Gavin when I talked about this. This was a skill that we worked on quite a bit in fourth grade, but it's still a skill that's a struggle. So I think it'll be very important for us to practice this as we do our remote learning. It is elapsed time. This is when you are trying to figure out time in between something, and you have to draw your conclusions based off of situations. So if we look at this first situation right here, Opal finished her art project at 2:25 p.m. She spent 50 minutes working on her project. What time did she start working on her project? Well, you need to look at the situation and be able to lay out your information to where it makes sense to you. If it helps you to draw a picture about the situation, you can do that. And the author decided to kind of lay it out in some type of chart form. You could do that too. So, what do you need to find out? This goes right along with, I don't know if the other classroom teachers talked about this, but when we read story problems, I always tell my students that they need to circle any numbers because we're talking about math. So if we can find any numbers in the story problem, that most likely that has to do with the situation. Also, I tell my fourth graders, and I'm telling you right now, that you need to always underline the question. When you underline that question, it really draws your attention to what you're trying to talk about. And then you double underline any key information. So we're talking about time. So that is our key fact here with it. Okay. And we're talking about time that's in minutes. And it looks like we're going to have to deal with some hour time also. Okay. So if we again look at the thing, what do we need to find out? I need to find Opal's start time. So we can use the end time, which is 2:25 p.m., and the elapsed time, which means the time in between. So the time in between the end time and the beginning time, that's elapsed time. So we have 50 minutes to work with. And how can I use this information? Well, what the author's showing is you could draw a picture, kind of like what I talked about, or you could draw a chart to help you figure it out. So they drew a diagram of a clock. And they found where 2:25 is. That's where the hour hand remembers the shorthand, the minute hand's the long hand. They drew a picture of 2:25. And they know that this is the end time. So they need to figure out the beginning time, which means you need to go backwards on a clock. Remember, a clock always goes clockwise like this. We're going to have to go backwards, counterclockwise. And we need to go backwards 50 minutes. We also know that in a clock, that it's by 5 minutes. So you can count by fives up to 50. So 5, 10, and you go all the way around. It kind of looks like a flower anyway. You end up on the 7. If you ended up on that 7, that means it would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. So that is where they got the 35. However, it's not going to stay 2 o'clock because remember, if you're going, your minute hand's going all the way up to the 12th, that means you have to go back an hour, which means it's no longer 2 o'clock, it's now 1 o'clock hour. So that's how they got the 135. Okay, we are going to go through these problems. I'm thankful that they drew a clock because I was thinking, gosh, it would be so nice to have our resources and our manipulatives and our little clocks to play with, but I know you guys can make the best out of the situation that we're in. Bill wants to be at school at 8:05. Okay, so if I look at this and I go, okay, well, 8:05, let me get my pen out here. Sorry, my eye itch. I have my hour hand, which is going to be pointing to the 8, and then 05 is pointing to the 1. Okay, now he wants to be at school then. It takes him 20 minutes to walk to school. At what time should he leave? Once again, you know that it's 8:05 and you need to work backwards. So that's why they have pointed these hours and they've helped you count to it. So if we go and it ends up on that 9, that means it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So you know that it's going to be 45 as the minute, What's the hour? Well, we know that that minute hand has to go past the 12, so it's no longer going to be 8. It's going to be on the 7. And we're only talking about 20 minutes. So what time of day is it going to be? It's still morning time, so I'm going to make sure I include that label and write AM. So 7:45 a.m. Let's do one more as an example. Mr. Gleason's math class lasts 40 minutes. Math class starts at 9:55. So my shorthand is at 9 and then my big hand points to 55. Okay. At what time does it end? Well, now we have the start time and we need to figure out when it ends. So that's why they're counting forward, because you're trying to figure out the end time. Once it can count by 5s, you end up on that 7, which you know is 35. And then what hour would you be talking about when you're doing this? Well, it's right now at 9, and you know that minute hand's going past the 12, so that hour hand needs to go up to the 10. Very good. Now we're only talking about 45 minutes or 40 minutes, so it's still going to be AM. Good luck with elapsed time. I didn't feel like I had to go into a lot of detail. We've done a lot of instruction with this. It just takes a lot of practice. So practice, practice, practice. Take your time. Really think about the question. Think about, am I having to go forward on a clock or do I have to go backwards on the clock? And then if you pass that 12, does that hour hand need to change? Those are the things that you need to constantly think about while you're working on this. Thank you.